Thank you and welcome back to this broadcast. We have a late start today, but we want to get right into the broadcast. You would recall that over the last few weeks, we've had a running theme, which is reconnecting back to God's ideas or God's ideas about His kingdom and how we operate in His kingdom. Tonight, though, we want to focus on a discussion which may be a multi-part one, perhaps, but it's believers' way of victory. And to put that in another way, how do we operate in the kingdom of God? Whatever we say tonight is not going to be anything novel. We're not reinventing the wheel. We're simply going back to what has been established and what is God's pattern of working with His people that we've seen all through the ages. And what strikes me is the consistency in this God's way of working. And it bears re-echoing time after time that God isn't expecting anything different, nor is He expecting anything special because we're in a different civilization or a different age or a different time. As a matter of fact, God's ways are consistent and consistently so. That's why one of the great attributes that we've come to learn about God is the fact that He is faithful. The attribute of faithfulness teaches us to understand that God is consistent. It means He is unchanging in His way. And trust is a function of that consistency. We can trust God because He is consistent. His ways are unchanging. He reserves the right to come to us in different ways, use different occasions, but the principles that underpin His way of working are consistent. And that is precisely the basis for the believer's way of victory. This way is not anything new. We can trace it in all of God's dealings with all of His people, whether present or past. And we can see this right from God's act of creation, in that when God made Adam, there was something He did. He sourced the container through earth material, but the content was from Himself. If you've been following most of our presentation, you see that this is something that is consistent in what we've been discussing. God made sure that the content of Adam was Himself. And that shows a kind of partnering or partnership that God envisioned in the way man ought to operate. If you put it in a very simple way, we can put it in this way, that God wanted to work in man. God wanted to be at work in Adam. Adam, as a reminder, is that representation of the human race. So God's vision right from the beginning was to be at work in Adam, so that whatever you would attribute to Adam would in fact be attributable to God, because we'd find out that God is the one walking in Adam, and God has not changed. As we are told, God put himself inside Adam. He made earth, but the image, the content, the character, the persona, the personality inside that earth material was God. And that is still the way God intends to work, so that whatever you would get from God, whatever was obtainable from God, you could also get in that representation that was called man. God will be able to function through man. And this was certainly a pre-planned arrangement. God, as we are told, is spirit, meaning a being who operates within a different medium other than the material physical medium. And if he was to operate within the physical medium, then according to his preference, he had determined that it would be through an agency. That agency is mankind. Or you could say that it was possible for God, being spirit, to walk through a material agency. So potentially it could walk within animals, walk within plants, and anything as long as that thing is material. But his preference was to walk through the agency of mankind. Because the composition of man was such that he had earth part, but God wanted him to also have the content, the software, the unseen part, which in God's superior wisdom was not to be earth originated. God wanted the content of man on earth to be from heaven. So, and that was himself. So you could say that man was to be fronting for God, was to be the foreman, the one to act on behalf of, the one with the legal representation for man, the one who would have the authority. So in the arrangement that God had, you could talk about power in two contexts. Number one, in the context of ability, and in the second, in the context of authority. So God would be the retainer of the ability, and man would be the recipient of the authority. So ability and authority would originate from God, but the authorized would always be the human, whereas the authority would always be God. And the ability will also originate from God, and the enabled will be man. This is God's principle arrangement. So, how does this apply? Look at all of the recording in scriptures, and we see that this is exactly what God wanted to do. And that would be without prejudice to any kind of function. If it was going to be speech, God wanted to be the source, and man would be the resource. So, many times we will see in scriptures, particularly when God was dealing with the prophet, you will see statements like, and the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah, and the word of the Lord came to Isaiah. Meaning the source of that word or that idea or that message would be God. But the medium, the channel, the agency through which it would be presented would be the man. So, and this talks to a certain kind of division of labor. And people, every human agency that understood these dynamics had tremendous success in the context of working with God, because they understood that if God was the one saying something and their own part was to simply present it, they need not worry about any other thing except to simply present it. So if God has said, in the next 2 days, there will be so much abundance in the land, it wasn't the job of the speaker to do the calculations and wonder, oh, wait a minute, what is the current economic situation? What is the current inflation rate? What is the prevailing macroeconomic factors? The job. So this is where I talk about division of labor thing. See, division of labor brings simplicity. If I understand my job is to move a little box from point A to B, and someone else has the job to move it from point B to C, then, and I know that the one who is to do the next part is capable, what do you think I should focus on? Well, simply put, focus on ensuring that I've taken the material from A to B. We see this in sport. So if you look at relay, let's say 4x1, and you have 4 ladies that are to run, each of them just exchange the baton until they finish the race. Each of them has to understand their role or their roles, the particular part of the race they were running or they are responsible for, and the terms of that particular race or leg of the race. That's what we use in relay. We call about the leg. So you're taking the first leg or the second leg or the third or the fourth. So if someone is taking the first leg, you know you are the one to not default by jumping the gun. Because once you do that, it doesn't matter how well the rest have prepared, you get your entire team disqualified. So you have to wait and only start off once you hear the gun. Then the one that is running the bend knows, right, I have to hit this bend as hard as possible and make sure that, and also understand the points of exchanges, the starting point and the end point. So you know you have to exchange the baton within the allowable distance. Then make sure the baton is not dropped, pass it on to the next one. And hopefully you get to give the one carrying the last leg and trust each one to do the job. But the point is, you focus on your leg of the race and make sure you successfully hand over the baton in the most efficient way possible. So you look at that as classic division of labor, each one understanding their roles and the terms of fulfilling those roles. In the same way, in our partnering with God, there is that kind of partnership. God wanted it so. This is something that we first need to appreciate. We are not the originator of that way of working. God originated it. God wanted it. The Almighty, omnipotent, all-powerful God wanted it so. So there is no arguing and thinking, God, why did you do? No, there's no point. God ordained it. And all he says is, okay, you understand your part and simply do it. Once you've done your part, do not start to fret over my own part. Don't forget, we're talking about the believer's way of victory. How do we overcome? How do we get the victory that God intended for us? So, and I was using the example just moments ago that if God said, okay, it's time for healing, it's time for provision, it's time to go on a venture, time to start a business, it's time to get serious with our work with Him, we have to understand, or we have to embrace what our part is in that work. And first, see that number one is it's a partnership. There is nothing God says to anyone to do that God did not intend to partner with the individual to do, to achieve. God has always wanted it so. So please, let's appreciate that whatever God says to us, whatever God says to you, whatever it says to me, He intends that it should be done in partnership with this sense of working together, co-laboring. What is required on my part is a sense of divine dependence, that what is in front of me is a joint labor with the source, with the partner that is very capable, that is most capable. And I have to be reminded that the supply of ability is not my responsibility. I have to be mindful that the authority to do the work does not originate from me. I am a recipient of authority. I have authority to do my part of the work. I'm going to use an example just to remind us about this. So look at Jesus. One time he was talking about the work he was going to do. He said something, he said, I have the power to lay down my life and to take it up again. He then said, This authority I received from my father. My father promised me that I needed to do this one part, and he will take care of the resurrection part. That if I lay down my life, he will wake me up. He said, that's what my father told me. And I know him enough to trust him to do his part. He says, I'm going to act on my own authority. He said, no one forces me to do it. I have the authority to lay down. I understand my role and I'm exercising that authority with full knowledge that my father, my partner, the one with the ability, the one that is greater than all, is able and will indeed do his own part. This is the basis of trust, or what we simply call faith. It's based on an understanding that, number one, I am a co-laborer with someone. This person that I'm a co-laborer with is, number one, full of power, has unlimited ability. We call that omnipotent. Number two, he has authorized me to play my part. That is, he is the source of the authority under which I act. If he is the source of the authority, then he is able to back up whatever is done on his authority. Another way to put authority is his name. Whatever is done in his name, with his blessing, with his license, he is able to back it up. If I know that and I understand it, and I submit myself to that understanding, so much so that I then act according to the terms of what is required of me, we call that faith. So faith is not a spooky thing. It's this, or call it trust, is based on this. I have authority from my father. Okay, now let's look at a very quick check to see how this has happened time after time. Look at what God said to first set of human beings. What did he say to them? He said, okay, we're making them in our image and our likeness, and let them have dominion. He said all that. Now, the next verse, I believe in verse 28 of Genesis chapter 1, says, and God blessed them. That word blessed them is the same word for, and God released them into his program, or, and God authorized them, or, and God licensed them. Let me quickly highlight that there are two words that is used to describe power in the Greek. One is dunamis. The other is exousia. Dunamis is the one that means ability, which is about someone has ability to accomplish or to do something. That is dunamis. Exousia, on the other hand, which in English is also power, is actually the word for authority. So, when you hear, I give you power to tread over serpent and scorpion, It's not talking about dunamis, it's talking about authority. Whereas when it says God is mighty in power, the word you find there is the word dunamis, which is might or ability. This is important because in our dealing with God, we understand that we walk with Him based on authority. He is the source of power. He is the God of all ability. We are recipients of His authority. And the only way He wants us to walk with Him is on the basis of authority. So that whatever we're doing is done based on the fact that we are authorized. So you will see many times that when prophets are sent to speak to the people, the way it would happen is you will hear, and the word of God came to Isaiah. Say to the nation of to the people of Israel, or say to my people, or something like that. And Isaiah will simply repeat everything he has been said word for word. Because authority has scope. You only stay within the bounds of the authority. If he said something other than what God has said to him, then he is only saying his own word. He, at that point, would not be acting under authority. He would not be a legal representative, and he would not be an ambassador. An ambassador is one who only acts under the authority of the power or of the state that commissions him or her. So, if we're talking about the way believers have victory, walks in victory, maintains victory, it is this foundation. Now, look at Jesus. Jesus said, I do nothing of my own. In fact, the work you see me do, it is my Father who sent me that is doing the work. He has given me commandment both what to say and how to say it. And look at the wonderful words of Jesus. In John chapter 15, he said, abide in me, for without me, you can do nothing. Meaning, this partnership must remain. It is God's choice way of working. You abide in me and I in you. So that's talking about a union or a partnership or a coexistence, co-laboring, co-working. So that is the design. This is the principle of man. See, the principle of the human is that man is not designed to work independent of God's authority. I like the way Charles Wesley, or whether Charles or John Wesley said it. He was describing God's way of working. He said, it seems to me that without God, man cannot. And without man, God will not. See, the cannot talks about ability. Will not talks about a sense of partnership, a choice. You can, but you will not. It's as if You are just choosing to do something rather than your ability to do it. You can do it, but you choose the way in which you will do it. God's way is to do it in union with man. As far as the matter of earth is concerned, that is why, look at it. Whenever anything is to be done on earth, just look at it. Is it a road that needs to be constructed? Is it a building? Is it a school that needs to be fixed? Is it a business that needs to be built? God, on the earth that man lives, God's plan is, I want to work with a man, a human being, to do it. I want to work with one who is authorized to do this. And this is the basis for prayer. And when we pray, just look at the prayer again. When you pray, it says, Our Father, you are in heaven. That is, you are in a realm where bodily experience is not required. A spiritual, extraterrestrial experience is only what obtains there, or call it supernatural, above natural experience. So you're in heaven. We honor your name. But earth cannot do without your government or your kingdom or your administration. So your kingdom come, we need your kingdom to come from heaven, where you are, to earth, because man is not designed to go originate his own government or governance. You design that man should govern or learn his government from you. Put it this way, the source of government is God. His intent is that government or governance should originate from him, however, be implemented, be channeled through the agency of man. You can even say that God did this way, as it were, through every created being. So, for the animals, he also delegated a kind of governance to them, so they can govern their own species. I mean, when you see the way animals build their nest or their dens and maintain their territory, you will know that they are governing their space. God is the first to devolve government, put it that way. And he intended that the apex government on earth should be through the agency of mankind. So let your kingdom come. Let your will be done. We want to know what you're thinking, because that is what earth needs. So you can see that sit in that prayer. Again, still talking about the fact that earth and heaven ought to work together. Without God, man cannot. But without God, without man, God will not. So did I say that? Without God, man cannot, and without God, man cannot, and without man, God will not. Sorry, that took me a few times, but I think you get the idea. So this is God's pattern, his preferred way of working. And the reality is, see, God's ideas are not I want to say are not just things to be thrown aside and ignore. If you ignore the thinking, the will of a manufacturer, what you're saying is that you're willing to jeopardize the well-being of the product. That's why God's thoughts are not mere opinions to simply cast aside. Right. I feel like we probably have a few more legs to go on this. We'll try and wrap up in a way where we can anchor our heart and then pick up from there. But it's important to understand, to reiterate that point, that our way of victory is that of partnering with God in a way where there is dependence. Certainly for man, it's a kind of submission to authority. On the side of God is an appointment of a delegate, one to bear the authority. So that's where the concept of delegated authority comes from. God appoints a delegate, man submit to the authority and to the power that be. Not powers that be, the power that be. Power, authority comes from God, but man acting under authority is a delegate or a commissioner and is also an ambassador. That's where those words come from. It's in that context that those words are meaningful. And that really is the basis of the way man works. Let me make this point tonight before we end, that just in a practical sense, when God says anything to us, the first thing is to understand what I've said before. But this one point in addition is important, which is that the ability to bring something to pass is not my responsibility. So, because this is where sometimes we tend to become an inhibition to what God is doing. We start to think, what if it doesn't happen? If God said this to me, what if it doesn't happen and I feel embarrassed? Well, God did not say that the ability to bring something to pass is my responsibility. That's why I'm saying I need to understand my role, the scope of my own assignment. If he says, tell them that everything will be all right, even if everything is currently chaotic, my job is to say everything will be all right, because I've not invented any part of the world. My job is not to invent any part of the work. I'm simply to hear what he's saying or see what he's doing and just do it. So if, let's say, he's saying, let's move these boxes, and he's moving a box, and I just say, okay, go move the box. That is the concept of this divine division of labor, which protects me from engaging in something that is not my responsibility. So it's not for me to be thinking, what if it does not happen? What if no, that's not that that is getting ahead of myself. I am not told to make it happen. I'm simply told to do my part, say something, do something, that is, act under instruction, under authority, and just stay under authority, period. What if after doing my own, nothing happens? Well, if I'm to be blunt, that is not my business. It's not my business. I'm interested in the whole matter for sure. Just like in a relay, I want everyone running the leg to do well. So I run my part, I hand over the baton, but I have to trust the next person to also run the leg in the right way. But fretting over whether that person is going to run the leg in the right way is, what's the word to you? Simply put, is unnecessary. But we're not just talking about people with whom we have equal abilities. We are talking about God who is surpassing in ability. So, meaning the partnership between I and God is one that is well resourced, so that even if all I bring is a grain of salt, He has a whole truckload of salt that my own grain of salt is always adequate, because I'm adding a grain of salt to adequacy. This is why I'm saying that, say, in this partnership, my ability is not what counts. In fact, God knows that I do not have the ability. I'm not the source of ability. I'm also not the source of authority. I am just privileged to be in union with somebody who has all of the ability. It's like you want to do business and your partner already puts all the money that is needed on the table and just says, I just want to work with you. I just like you. I just want to work with you. So what do? Just say, well, thank you very much. What do you want me to do? He says, you know what? Just, that's your table. Just sit down there. And then, when help us sign this paper. What do? To sign the papers. It's not asking you to bring 1 million on the table. It's just saying, don't worry about the funds. That's all taken care of. I just want you to be in the business with me. I just like the way you smile. So just be there and be smiling. Well, what do you think I need to do? I better sharpen my teeth properly and be smiling, because that's what is asking me to do. Do you argue that that's too small, or, well, I don't like the fact that you don't bring so much to the table? Well, that's all is asking me to bring to the table. Say, sit down there and just smile. Of course, I'm oversimplifying this, but maybe that's actually all it needs to be. Meaning, just simply do what He wants you to do. Finally, to round up, remember that day when Jesus went with his mom to the wedding party. After the wine was finished, the guys were saying, we don't have wine anymore. And Jesus reluctantly got involved. And they said, just go and put some water in the water pot. What is the correlation between water and wine? They were asking for wine. But look at what He told them to do. He just told them, put water in the wine. And then take water to the chairman of the occasion. If after taking the water to the chairman, and the man takes and say, how dare you bring water to me? What do you think those guys should do? They should just point to Jesus and say, He told us to bring it. That's all. Please don't blame us. That man there told us to bring you this water. It was not their business to turn that water into wine. That's my point. It is not your business to bring solution to the matter. Just know what you are asked to get involved with in the whole scheme of things, in the whole engagement, and do just that. That is the sure way of victory. That's where we hang our hat tonight. Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to being together same time next week by the grace of God. Good night and God bless.